Okay, and good day, Year 9, and welcome back to Refining Writing Skills, Lesson 6. So we've moved from practicing to refining, which means deliberately trying to really intentionally think about making things even better than they were before. Refining, sharpening what we can already do to make it better. And in particular today, we're not writing, we're going to be helping people to imagine a character. So we're going to look today at how we craft character and how we can introduce character into our writing. But before we do that, we're going to go into an activity, okay, that's designed to help us structure ideas around, to reflect, sorry, on some of the ideas we've already seen so far in terms of becoming better writers. Now, we've got a brief description here of a character from William Golding's classic novel, Lord of the Flies. So it's a very short, succinct description. Hopefully what you've seen emerging is that this isn't about writing pages and pages. We are looking at creating sentences of powerhouse like writing. So we have one sentence here that encapsulates a character. Inside the floating cloak, he was tall, thin, and bony, and his hair was red beneath the black cap. Okay, then, so let's look at what making this sentence work then. So it says here, inside the floating cloak he was tall, thin and bony, and his hair was red beneath the black cap. So the first one, nice easy one to get us started. All sentences must have a subject and a verb to comprise a sentence. Okay, so number 1 and 2 are getting me to just remember that and to see if you can spot it. So is the subject of this sentence a person, place, or thing? And circle the word that helps you decide. Brilliant. Number 2, the verb to be is a really common yet irregular verb. In other words, it's one of the most frequently used verbs, to be or not to be, that is the verb, but it changes based on number and tense. It's irregular. So it can be, is, were, was. So based on that information, how many times is the verb to be used in the sentence? Okay, let yourself have a little look. Now, number 3, we looked at these yesterday. Another component of kind of building up description, adjectives. So could you list 3 adjectives used in the sentence? There are more than 3, but I would just like 3, please. And number 4, prepositions are the words that tell us the relationship, the position of things within a sentence. So where things are. Could you circle 2 prepositions in that sentence? So 2 words within that sentence that tell us the position of things? Brilliant. Now, last but not least, number 5. Now, guys, I know I'm reading through them. You can pause and give yourself time to answer in a minute. Also, I would say, where it's a list 3 adjectives, you just have to write the adjectives down. You don't have to write full sentences, okay? So number 5 says, this sentence, or this description of a character, is a compound sentence. There are 2 main ideas that are linked using the connective and. And in theory, if you remove the connective and, you can rewrite a compound sentence as simple sentences. So can you do that job of creating 2 simple sentences in place of a compound sentence? Brilliant. Okay, I'll see you together in a minute for the answers. Let's have the big reveal. Okay, so lots of things going on. Oh no. Okay, so is the subject of this sentence a person, place, or thing? So we've got this first indicator, he. So he's nameless. We're only introduced to the subject of the sentence using the pronoun he, but it's telling us that this is about a person, and more specifically, a male. And if you know anything about William Golding's beautiful book, Lord of the Flies, it's a boy. So all subjects will have that subject. We will be able to identify within a sentence the who, what, or where. That is the main focus. Okay, the idea is being built around that main subject, and every sentence needs one. But a sentence isn't a sentence without a subject and a verb. So how many times is the verb to be used in the sentence? Brilliant. It's in its irregular form, was. So that's past tense, he was, and it's singular because there's only one of them. He was, his hair was. Brilliant. Okay, so we've got was is being used twice. Now, for the 3 adjectives, there are more than 3. Now, let's just look at some of the characteristics of adjectives again then. So colours are adjectives. So we've got red hair, we've got a black cap. So any words that are colours are adjectives. So when we're thinking about creating characters today, we might be thinking about our adjective choices in terms of colour of eyes, colour of hair. But adjectives also tell us more about what something is like. It tells us its characteristics. So this character, this male character, was tall, thin, and bony. Okay, so we've got the lovely alliterative, tall and thin. Bony. Now, this could be somebody that's malnourished. This could be somebody thin because they've not eaten a lot. Or this could be somebody in that stage of adolescence where they just suddenly have a growth spurt. So we don't know enough to determine whether his thinness and boniness is a sign of like neglect and malnutrition, or whether it's just he's in a growth spurt. But it is already helping us to visualize and imagine our character. Okay, now you might not have got floating. Now, you might not have got floating because you might have seen an ing ending and thought it's a verb. And I'm not going to lie, the reason language at A level is complicated is there's always what we call variations. There's always moments where the rules that we apply don't work. So if we're always applying the rule that verbs end in ing, we could have ignored floating thinking it was a verb. But actually, really, adjectives tell us more about nouns. They modify nouns. So if we actually look at the noun here, cloak, what is the cloak like? It's floating. There's a modifier. It's telling us more about the cloak. And that becomes an adjective in that position. Okay, so there's our adjectives. Now, the prepositions tell us the relationship between things. So did you get the two words that tell us the relationship, the position? Brilliant. Inside and beneath. So I love this image that inside the floating cloak, he was tall, thin and bony. And his hair was red beneath the black cap. So this is a nerdy moment, okay? And I love getting interested enough about language, which I always am, to be a little bit nerdy. So actually, there's almost like this sentence almost reveals a character, but almost encapsulates them by their clothes. So we've got the cloak and the cap, like at the beginning and the end of this sentence. And within the cloak and the cap is the character himself. So it's this lovely sense of which it's a framing of a character, okay? And the uniform, if you like, the clothes kind of punctuate this character. They kind of contain this character, cloak and cap, black cap, floating cloak. And that could be indiscriminate. Anybody could be wearing a floating cloak and a black cap. So this is a lovely revelation of character being concealed or revealed within the uniform of a cloak and a cap. Yep, so inside the floating cloak, beneath the black cap, we could change any of those descriptive details, the colour of the hair, the shape and of the body, to introduce different characters. Okay, so it's a really lovely way of framing a character description where you kind of bookend it with parts of the clothes and then reveal the other characteristics within. I think it's really clever. And the inside and the beneath enable that to happen. Okay, brilliant. Now, 5, a bit more long-winded. So this sentence is a compound sentence because the two main ideas are linked using the connective and. So idea number 1, inside the floating cloak, he was tall, thin and bony, and his hair was red beneath the black cap. So we can rewrite that as 2 sentences. Inside the floating cloak, he was tall, thin and bony, full stop. His hair was red beneath the black cap. And then we create 2 simple sentences from our compound one. So guys, give yourself a mark out of 5. If when we're doing these, you missed an answer or you didn't know an answer, or you get something wrong, this is your chance to fix it. This is the process of using these recap lessons to kind of learn and secure what we know or don't know. So that's just getting us ready for grounding our learning today. So we have been on a writing journey. Now, we've done panoramic description of the landscape. In other words, we've taken one of the 4 pictures. We're now committed to using that picture to inspire our writing. And we've done a panoramic description of the landscape. Then in yesterday's lesson, we zoomed in to describe an object or thing from the picture in more detail. Okay, so in our writing journey, you should be able to look and see 2 paragraphs written in your own notes. Hopefully by now you've given them to your teacher for a little glance over. So can you imagine the vast, inexplicable loneliness of the Kansas wheat plains? There's my opening sentence type to get my reader thinking. Whilst walking, so I'm using the subordinate conjunction, whilst there, tick. Your eyes widen in awe as it absorbs the expanse of the sky, a starch blue blanket tucked in tight against the horizon. As this hard blue horizon, a line that separates the heavens and the earth, melts to gold, the wheat, a swathe of golden cereal, begins to ripple like the sea. As the sea of wheat impregnates the air with the scent of summer, it threatens to drown out all other life, until a house, a worn and weathered building, appears like a boat cast adrift. Now we're going into paragraphs 2 because we're zooming in to describe an object or thing from the picture in more detail. And this is what we did yesterday, our 5 sentences. The building cannot be seen from great distances, but suddenly rises above the sea of wheat. It is a shipwrecked carcass that may have been a barn or may have been a home. Its walls were corrugated iron sheets, haphazardly stapled together with bolts of different sizes, forced through the metal by hurried, careless hands. The roof of the building was once tiles, overlaid and lopsided, but nobody would live there now. Okay, so is it perfect? No. I like it. I liked my shipwreck carcass idea. That made me smile because it tied into that metaphor of the sea. I like bits of it. I like that I was clever enough to nick the word haphazardly from the other text. But I think the end, and I haven't talked about how it changes. So this is that process of refining. As we're reading and returning to our work, we're always positioning ourselves to be a critic. Now, critic is not the same as being negative. Critic is not tearing up a book and saying I'm rubbish. Critic is, I like this I can upgrade. Now, there is going to be, in our final lesson this week, a big chunk of time given to changing and refining based on what we look at. But what we're really going to focus on today is what comes next. So our third and final paragraph. So we're following the Capote model. So we've ticked to our panoramic description. We've ticked to describing something in detail. And today we're going to look into the fact that Capote zooms in to describe a character. Down by the depot, the postmistress, a gaunt woman who wears a rawhide jacket and denims and cowboy boots, presides over a falling apart post office. The depot itself, with its peeling sulphur-coloured paint, is equally melancholy. The chief, the super chief, and the L captain go by every day, but these celebrated expresses never pause there. No passenger trains do, only an occasional freight. Now, I'm not going to lie, if we were being from a reading point of view, really this is a combination of character and place, but we're going to focus in on creating a paragraph to introduce character today. So, just again to check in with our reading to see what Capote's doing that can inspire our own. So we're getting used to this process by now. You're really good at this. So a much shorter chunk of writing. Again, paragraphs, they organize, they focus our ideas. They can be short, they can be long. Okay, the variation of paragraph length is again about focusing. What does the writer want to focus our attention on? What does he want us to pay attention to? What's he saying in this paragraph? Look at. Here he's saying, look at this woman. Look at where she works. So, can you list 4 things you learned about the postmistress? Okay, so I'm just going to let you pause, give yourself the time you need, but I wouldn't take longer than 5 minutes. If you're there in an hour's time still doing this task, you kind of missed the point. So put a timer on for about 4 or 5 minutes. At the end of that, come back in and check your answers. Okay, lovely. So what have we got then as our answers? Now, what I like about this is it tells us not only that we've got good reading skills of getting these right, but it's also going to help us when we're making choices for our own writing. So the postmistress is, did you get it? Gaunt. Now, gaunt is a lovely adjective. We're going to look at what it means in a minute. But it reminds us that we understand characters based on the adjective choices. Okay, and here we've got an adjective being used to introduce the character of the woman, a gaunt woman. Could have said a happy woman, a fearless woman, an angry woman. You know, our choice of adjectives immediately set us up to believe something or to understand something about the character. Right, the postmistress is wearing a rawhide jacket. The postmistress is wearing cowboy boots. So we understand the characters. There is a need to be able to create a physical, like mental picture of a character, and detailing their clothes and what they wear is important part of that. Now, actually, from a structural point of view, we know Capote did a similar thing in the opening paragraph where he told us what the men wear in this area, and they wear boots and jackets and denims. So it suggests that it's almost like a uniform, that anybody that lives in this place is wearing a similar sort of outfit. Maybe it's because of the way that they work. It's the idea that they have to work on this land. Now, you could have said denims. The postmistress is wearing denims. That would have been right. But I just wanted to pick up on this detail. The postmistress is presiding over the post office. Now, here you go. So preside, this lovely word, this idea that she almost sees herself as president. She's in charge of the post office. This woman is the boss. So give yourself a mark out of 4 for those. Brilliant. And then we're going to look at the next task. Okay. So again, we've seen these here. It's rereading the paragraph, but to decide out of these 6 statements which is false and which is true. Okay, so number 1, the postmistress is a woman. The postmistress is a jovial, happy person. The postmistress wears a denim jacket. She oversees the post office. The post office is well looked after and busy. Both the postmistress and the depot are sad. So guys, I'm going to give you a minute to press pause, go through your answers. Remember, you don't have to write down the whole statements, just a T or an F, a true or a false will do. See you for the answers. Okay, are we ready? So, the postmistress is a woman. Okay, now I'm not meaning to mistress and woman. We're told that this is a woman, but when we're thinking about characters, making it clear whether they're male, female, their gender, what they identify as is an important part of building character. Now, the postmistress is a jovial, happy person. Do you get a sense that she's happy? She's not. Okay. It comes through in a minute through the word melancholy, but also gaunt means to be kind of like drawn and suffering. So the postmistress is a jovial, happy person. That is false. Okay. The postmistress wears a denim jacket. She's wearing a rawhide jacket. Rawhide means to be made from like kind of like a type of leather, animal hide basically. So she's dressed for the outdoors. She is a cowgirl kind of in her outfit, if you can visualize that. Jacket and denim jeans. Okay, she oversees the post office. Absolutely. That word presides, oversees is a synonym. It comes from presidency, to be president over something. So like we said before, she is boss of the post office. So guys, we want to know whether our characters are male or female. We want to be thinking about our choice of adjectives because they're going to tell us something about the character, the personality of a character, whether they're gaunt, whether they're happy. When we start thinking about maybe describing how our characters are dressed, now we're not going to be again going for pages after pages. Our writer, Capote, succinctly delivers all this information to us in a few sentences, but we can visualize that she wears her jacket, her jeans, her boots. So we get this overview almost of like her uniform, her clothes. Now this can be a clever moment. She dresses like the place. She dresses for the place. So this creates a sense that this is a woman who has lived here for a long time. If she was a postmistress and she was dressed in a fancy ruffly dress and pristine shoes, it might create the idea of somebody that's out of place, somebody that's trying to be something they're not, somebody that hasn't really been a part of Holcombe, whereas this woman definitely fits in. Now, the post office is well looked after and busy. Why is that false? So we can see it's false. What's the adjective phrase that helps us understand why that's false? Brilliant, falling apart. So actually, this is a woman who is closely connected to her job and where she works. So sometimes when we think about characters, we want to see how they anchor, they connect to the context of the world you're putting them in. So when we're thinking about characters today, how are our characters going to work within the world of the picture? And the postmistress and the depot are sad. Now, why is that true? This is the hardest one because this is about that skill of inference, reading beyond the obvious. And if you got it, it's true for a guess, fair play. But if you understood why and you tied it into this word melancholy, brilliant. I love it. So let's just look at the sentence. The depot itself, with its peeling sulfur-coloured paint, is equally melancholy. Now, equally melancholy, the depot itself is melancholy, but it's equally melancholy. In other words, it's equal in its sadness to her. So the postmistress and the depot are both sad, falling apart places. And melancholy means sadness. So brilliant. Give yourself a tick if you got that. Now, before we actually do this, I just want a quick checkpoint with you. That reminder that we've been looking at adjectives. These are words that modify and describe the noun. Adjectives tell us what the noun is like and can create a particular impression and atmosphere. So when we've got these key words, gaunt and melancholy, I'd like you to pause and write them down in a minute. They are lovely examples of adjectives. So gaunt is an adjective that means to be lean and haggard, or especially because of suffering, hunger, or age. So it's this idea immediately then the postmistress is perfectly suiting this town of Holcombe. This town of Holcombe that is aimless and neglected in a state of despair. And just as the town is suffering, this postmistress suffers as well. Now, there's a suggestion then to be lean and haggard, to kind of like life has taken its toll on you, and that life in Holcombe is not easy. It is in a state of despair, if you remember when we looked at that yesterday. Now, melancholy is to mean sad and pensive. Now, this is a beautiful word to bank for vocabulary for the future. Okay, so I would like you to write down gaunt and melancholy. I'm not saying that we could naturally use them today, but there might be an opportunity, depending on the picture you're about to choose, that you could. So just pause and write down gaunt and melancholy. And when you've done that, we're going to move on. Oh, I went the wrong way. Oh, oh. Okay. Yep, no, I just had a little mind melt there, guys. Sorry, I thought I'd stop recording and I was flapping, moving the slides around. Anyway, gone to melancholy. So, guys, what are we actually going to do today then? We're going to structure a character description. We're going to plan and draft paragraph 3. Now, we are only aiming to write about 3 to 5 sentences that are going to zoom in on a character. So, paragraph 1, panoramic description of place. Paragraph 2, zooming in on a detail within the image. Paragraph 3 is coming completely from our imaginations, because in none of our pictures do we see a character. But we are going to imagine the character that would best suit our image. And I do have some help for you in a minute. Now, we're going to use some characteristics here to help us plan our characters. We're going to think about a link between our characters and how we began our writing. So when we go through this process, I always want you to think, is there anything about my character that can link them back to anything I wrote in paragraph 1? And we're going to have a despite sentence to do that. We're going to want to think about the age of our characters. Okay. Now, although Capote didn't mention age explicitly, we definitely get a sense that the woman, because she was gaunt, was old. Now, we're going to describe general appearance, but we are going to take our writing beyond that of Capote. We're going to particularly focus in on eyes, because through the eyes, we can get an insight into the characters of an emotion. Through the eyes, window to the soul, we can get insight into a character's emotions, how they feel. So we're going to create a plan, which we're then going to turn into a series of sentences for the rest of this lesson. But to help you plan your character description, we're going to look at a series of portraits. Now, portraits are very particular types of pictures. They focus on people. Now, again, you can choose one of these images to inspire your writing, or you can choose to create a character from your imagination. Okay, guys, so as we go through, be patient, look at the images, okay? And then from that, we're then going to do the plan. So we are then going to write or complete some sentence stems, like some planning, and then we're going to turn it into some sentences. So are you ready to see some pictures? Okay, let's go. So who works with a machine like this? So there we are, back to our thresher. So guys, if you are writing about the image of the thresher, you've got your panoramic description, your paragraph where you zoomed in to describe your thresher, and now you're going to talk to me about somebody who works with a machine like this. Now, I'm just showing you these pictures. I actually love these pictures that I was finding for this. There's such a rich tapestry of images that come out of this kind of era. Okay, so I was just kind of like searching for Kansas Cowboys, the American West, and these are some of the pictures I got. Loved it. So when we're establishing age, now let's be honest, sometimes people look older or younger than they really are. So I was thinking, if we look at this guy just leaning, he's kind of like leaning wearily against this basket. So I was putting him maybe at between 50 and 60. So then when it says thinking about general appearance, it can just be, because we're planning, just some key adjectives, right? And nouns, things that we focus on. So I was looking at this first image and I was thinking, gosh, you can see he's got this kind of like wrinkled skin. Now, I always like to think metaphorically. That's just how my brain works. Plus, it's good writing to be creative. So I was immediately thinking, right, what does wrinkled skin make me think of? And I was like, oh, it's a bit like the bark of a tree. Okay, if you've ever seen tree bark, it's kind of like that wrinkled, rippled effect. Looks aged and worn. I do love the word weathered, but I've already used it in my building. But we could have put weathered there. So when you're describing the general appearance, you're a bit like the building, you say what you see. He's got this little beard, this little goatee. Now, because I'd already said bark and I was thinking like a tree, if I was describing more about his appearance, I might say that he's got like a trunk of a body. The idea that his body is bent but not broken. So he's had a hard life, but he keeps going. Now, describing their eyes. Now, this is where I've chosen to use black and white images to give you choice of colour. And I've gone for a kind of maybe a grey or green eyes, but I want a little spark of fire. There might be some flecks of gold in these eyes. Because when I look at this character, yes, on the externals, he looks weak and old. But I want to create the sense of somebody that's resilient, that's somebody that can withstand a hard life. So I've said he's got grey-green eyes, but with a little spark of fire, maybe some gold flecks in there. Now, when it comes to the insight into a character's emotions, this is the stretch. But remember how we started. Think about the feel of the place. So when we started with the image, we might have been writing down words like loneliness, busyness. Now, in that environment, what might the emotions of a character be? Now, it's always good as well to kind of like think about two changes of emotions. So like on one hand, they are this, but they're also this, because it just creates a bit of depth. So I'm still looking at the guy in front of the basket, and I'm thinking potentially this guy is somebody who's been through grief. He's had a difficult, hard life. Maybe he's mourning the loss of a loved one. He's mourning something's been lost to him. But, I love a but, he has not given up, so he's resilient. So you could have a character that's maybe angry, but passionate. A character who is apathetic and given up, but with a spark of hope. So can you see we've got age, general appearance, eyes, emotions. Now you can, based on speed and comfort, just work with me, and for each character come up with a few ideas and then decide actually that's the one I really like. Or you can just skip through, find the image that stands out to you and say that's the one I'm going to work with. Now, who else might work on a machine like this? Now, I love this. We've got a whole line of 4 cowboys. Now, I know it sounds silly. The only reason I want you to think about this is under appearance. Now, I've got a trunk of a body bent but not broken. But I just want to draw attention to the different kind of ways that we can describe stance. If you like, posture, stance, how people stand, how they position themselves. Because when we start to describe general appearance, it's easy to say he stood. But look at the different ways. We've got 4 guys, all wearing hats, all wearing denims, all wearing boots. But look at their difference. So we've got one, okay, with his thumbs hooked into the top of his pockets. Okay, so thumbs hooked on. He's got bent elbows, okay? He was angled, he was at an angle, so his shoulders are broad with a slight turn. If we look at this guy, hand on hip. He's relaxed, yep. So body posture, body language, relaxed with his hands on his hips, okay? One leg nonchalantly crossed over the other. All of them, this direct gaze, we could talk about maybe emotions, that they are defiant, that they are hardworking, defiant, but they're fed up of like working the land and the hard work. We could talk about the steely, fixed gaze of their eyes, grey steel or blue. Now, we've got here, this is a strange shape, but when you stand like this, with your feet apart like this, we could talk about akimbo, that he stood akimbo. It's quite a defiant stance. These 2 guys are a little bit seemingly, I feel like, more relaxed, like one leg in front of the other. Here we've got hands completely in the pocket. Here his hands are behind his back. Now, all of this description of the appearance helps to create what we call the body language, the feel of a character. So are these characters defiant, relaxed? Are these characters challenging? These 4 are definitely younger than our guy on his own, so we'd want to change their age. And again, I'm making assumptions, but they're working in the harvest season, so it's hot, so likelihood that they're going to be sunburnt, although their hats will protect them a little bit, but you might talk about like kind of like brown, the tanned brown skin. There's a lovely sense of now, if you love horse riding, yeah, like if you think like about your saddles and your bridles, they're made of leather and it gets worn over time, a bit wrinkly. So we could say that their skin is like the worn leather of a saddle. Well used, well worn. We could talk, what do you think their hands would be like if they're working the land all the time? That could give you something to describe. Okay, so let's just see. Now, the only reason I want to create a bit of contrast here, so this is our 50-year-old, 50 to 60-year-old, like we saw on the other page. But the grain elevator is quite a modern building. So if you are doing the modern setting of a grain elevator, actually it might be more likely that the worker would look quite modern and would have modern protective clothing. So here we've got a guy okay, in his modern protective clothing, so slightly different. Hard hat, gloves, and yet we can also see kind of like the dirt, the tattoo. Why would you protect your hands and your head, but not your body? Is that because of the heat? Is that because it's just the way that you work, that things are going to be falling on you from above? Is he maneuvering these big steel poles around? That's part of the grain machinery. Belt, jeans again. So all of our guys are wearing denim. Kind of, look at that kind of stern expression. His mouth turned down at the corners. All of the guys now, this could just be a photographer's thing because they know they're being photographed. You know, that kind of fixed gaze. None of them really look at this stage happy. They all look a little bit maybe defiant, a little bit aggressive. These are good characters that work in places like these. They're going to give you a lovely kind of thing to build. Now, if we're thinking about gaunt, okay, we saw that word earlier, and melancholy. I would say there is a sense of melancholy in these characters so far, a sense of sadness. Maybe it's a hard life how they work. This guy maybe, can you see here the wrinkles in the skin? That could be that he is gaunt, that he is haggard and lean and suffering. Now, a little bit of an, oh, sorry, I went too far. An older picture here, but here, because we haven't seen too much hair, we've got blonde, kind of hair swept back. We've got the wrinkled forehead, the furrowed brow. A younger man again, so these two are younger, probably like late 20s. Now on your screens, if you are looking at this as a PowerPoint as well, you can open it up to manipulate the pictures a little bit. Now this guy, yeah, so shirt, so work clothes. So you're going to choose your character, okay? So out of these images. Now, this is not meant to be underrepresentative. So are you ready? These are some of the girls that would work the land. Sorry, they do make me laugh, these pictures. But this is right. So our girls, so if we wanted to introduce a female character, these are the ones gathering the sheaves of wheat. So dungarees, shirts, their heads are covered. Now, guys, this is a practical measure as well because they're working out in the heat, so it's to avoid sunstroke and sunburn. So their heads are covered. We would not say that these are glamorous women, that these are stoics, a beautiful word, you know, hardworking, stoic, resilient women, not afraid to feel the earth between their fingers. So all of them probably looking there about 30s maybe. Their general appearance, so dressed in dungarees and shirts, their hair tied back, their heads covered, tanned, worn skin. I am, when I think about creating characters, when we've done this with year 10s and 11s, old faces can be a lot, like they kind of tell a story in a better way sometimes than a young face. So I have given us another old face if you wanted to work with this man. So look at that lovely wrinkled, kind of like his face tells his story. Do you like that idea, like the broken nose, where maybe he'd fought another ranch hand, a thin lip, a stubbled chin. So we've got lots of characters. Now, again, for each one, when you decide which one you're going to think about, which one do you find it easier to answer these questions for, to decide on a potential age, their appearance, their eyes, and something about how they're feeling, their emotions. Now, I didn't, again, want to be completely stereotypical. So we've got one image here that if you wanted a younger character, you ready? So here you go. Look at this girl. So total opposite in the sense that she is young, okay, but she is very much wearing the dress of the time. So we've got a white overcoat, a bonneted hat to kind of cover her face. But she's already working. Look, she's carrying, so she's already strong. She's already developing muscles. She's carrying these pails of wheat and things that she's picked from the ground. So how do you think she feels working that hard? How do you think it feels if that's her and she's working and suddenly the storm comes in? Yeah? So who could be caught in the storm picture like this? So we could have this girl caught in the storm. These guys may be our old man hiding in the barn. The four girls go there to dream and escape. So you've got a selection of images. And we've got just some headings that are going to help us come up with some planned ideas. So, oh, I've gone too fast again. So I just want you to pause here. I want you to go back to find the image that you like, the character. I want you to come up with an age for them. If you want a name, sometimes you can have them nameless or a name. Some ideas for their general appearance. Think about their eyes, the color of their eyes. Appearance could be anything like we saw with the opening sentence. It could be the color of the hair, whether they're thin, tall, bony. How are they feeling? Are they feeling lonely? Are they feeling defiant, aggravated? So I'm going to say, give yourself 5 minutes. Okay, then come back. I'm just going to explain the last stage. Okay, so to help you do the final bit of writing for today, so we're going to write our sentences to describe our character. Look at what we've got available to us. We've got the example from Truman Capote, okay, where he describes his postmistress. And we have, based on the images we've chosen, some ideas. And the final stage is we're going to use these sentence stems over here, okay, to help structure our paragraph. And I'm going to talk you through mine, and then that's what you're going to do. You are going to copy and complete these sentence stems. Now, the only thing I would say is we've used the they because I didn't know if you're going to choose the girl picture or the picture of the men or the women, a singular picture, a singular character, or if you're really confident, you could talk about more than one character. So the theys can change. They can become he, they can be she. And again, the sentence stems themselves, this little was, if you find it too tricky, change it to something else. Okay, now we did say this first despite needs to create a nice link back to paragraph 1. Now, I'm not going to lie, this is a lovely thing we try and encourage students to do at GCSE because it's called a cyclical link. So if we can create a link despite that back to paragraph 1, even though we're really going to be writing about a character, it's a good structure. It shows control and creativity. So I looked back at my paragraph 1, and I talked about the loneliness of the wheat plains. Okay, so I've got that. So despite the loneliness of the wheat plains and the brokenness of the building, a man was known to live there. Okay, so the despite sentence for you has to be pick up a word or phrase from your paragraph 1. So if you said something like the sky was overcast, you might say, despite the overcast skies, a woman was still out working. Or despite the overcast skies, a man was resting. So you just do your sentence to introduce your character. Okay? Now, they must have been about because. So this is where you start thinking about bringing in the age and some of the descriptive details. So I've changed they to he because I'm writing about a man. He must have been about 60 because his skin was like worn leather, creased and wrinkled and permanently stained brown by the sun. So the other thing is, when you start to do your sentence stems, if you want to extend your description, go for it. Don't feel you have to write tiny little sentences because the gaps are tiny. Okay? So he must have been about 60 because his skin was worn like weather, creased and wrinkled and permanently stained brown by the sun. Now, they had blank and blank. So still thinking about the notes and ideas from general appearance. So I'm thinking about the guy. Okay, I liked him. He was lent, wasn't he, against that basket. And although I was originally thinking about trees, I've gone with the leather one here because he's a cowboy. But I can bring in that. So I'm going to say he must have been about 60 because his skin was like worn leather, creased and wrinkled and permanently stained brown by the sun. So I'm just going to add in here for us. Okay, he had. Okay, now I'm just using the they had, but I'm changing it now to he had because I know my character now. So I've done his skin, and you can see I've got a sentence direction in a minute to focus on his eyes. So I'm going to pick up on some other details. Okay, he had grey. So I'm thinking about his hair. So he had grey. What's a good adjective for hair then? So he had grey. We've got red hair. We've got grey hair. He had he had grey hair. Now, we saw with the opening description example, this nice idea that William Golding actually framed his character's description beneath a cap and inside a cloak. So he had grey hair beneath a cowboy hat. A Stetson, we learnt that from Capote, beneath a rawhide Stetson. And So he had grey hair hidden beneath, I think would work better, wouldn't it? He had grey hair hidden beneath a rawhide Stetson and the remains of a half-shaved beard across his chin. Now, I'm just showing you by typing straight onto the screen. I know it's a bit distracting because there's other stuff around it, but that's that process. So I'm taking my sentences. I've got in my mind's eye my picture of my guy leaned against a barrel. Now, is this my best and my favourite? No, but I'm getting my paragraph done because I know, and this is what I'm telling you, is that tomorrow will all be about drafting. So let's have a look then. Their eyes were. Now, can you remember I said I wanted my guy to have green, grey eyes, but with a spark of fire with gold in them to suggest that he's like still a bit of a fighter. So he had grey hair hidden beneath a rawhide Stetson and the remains of a half-shaven, actually a half-grown, maybe might work better, a half-grown beard across his chin. His eyes were grey-green, like the sky before a storm, with flecks of gold, of fire gold, that blazed when he was angry. Okay, so I'm just showing, can you see? So I had my ideas from the image and now I'm just using them as I write my paragraph. I'm taking my sentence stems from here. So despite the loneliness of the wheat plains and the brokenness of the building, a man was known to live there. He must have been about 60 because his skin was like worn leather, creased and wrinkled and permanently stained brown by the sun. He had grey hair hidden beneath a rawhide Stetson and the remains of a half-grown beard across his chin. His eyes were grey-green like the sky before a storm, with flecks of fire gold that blazed when he was angry. Okay, so the last bit. It was clear. Oh, right. I'm going to nick. I was thinking about this earlier. I said, didn't it? Like one of the guy's faces looked like it was telling a story. So it was clear from the scars and broken nose that that his face told the story he tried so desperately to hide. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, now, I quite like the idea of that the face reveals that which he's trying to hide. He's hiding in this hut because he doesn't want anybody to know his story. Now, guys, we're not going beyond 3 paragraphs. We're doing an extract, but I'm already, with good characters, you're already imagining the story they would tell. So if you're doing a good character description, we're going to be imagining the story we want them to tell us. We want to know a character's story. So this is not perfect because that's going to lead into tomorrow's lesson. Okay, me not being perfect often does, but you should have, okay, paragraph 1, 2, and 3. If you are missing any gaps, you misunderstood a lesson, you haven't got paragraph 1, you didn't quite finish ... Tomorrow's lesson is designed to give you time to do that. It's not actually, there's like a starter. It's not designed to introduce too much new writing. It's all about taking the writing you've got and finishing it, okay? So enjoy crafting your character for me. Use those sentence stems, and I look forward to seeing and hearing from your teachers about the wonderful work you've done. Okay, so that is the end of our lesson.